Well, Millie Cooper, this isn't really your scene, is it? The voice stopped me mid-step as I was following the maitre d' to my table at L'Artiste, Chicago's only 3-star Michelin restaurant. I turned to find myself face-to-face with Ethan Powell, who was lounging at a corner table with a glass of Bordeaux in one hand and a smirk on his face. Seated across from him was a woman at least 20 years his senior, dressed impeccably in Chanel, a large diamond glittering on her manicured hand. "Ethan," I managed, keeping my voice steady despite the sudden flutter of anxiety in my chest. "What a surprise." "I bet," he replied, his eyes traveling over my outfit with poorly disguised judgment. "Don't worry, the waiters here are used to explaining the menu to newcomers. Though I doubt you'll appreciate the culinary artistry. Remember how you used to think Olive Garden was fancy Italian?" The woman beside him shifted uncomfortably. "Ethan, don't be rude." "Just catching up with an old friend, Vivian," he told her, patting her hand dismissively. "Millie and I go way back. We dated in college before I upgraded my standards. I'm Millie Cooper, 30 years old, and until this moment, I'd been looking forward to a quiet business dinner at L'Artiste. I'd spent the afternoon finalizing details for a new product line with my team and wanted to celebrate the successful partnership that had doubled our company's revenue in the past year. What I hadn't wanted was to run into the man who'd shattered my heart 7 years ago, especially not while he was clearly playing boy toy to a wealthy older woman. "Madam, your table is ready whenever you are," the maitre d' murmured discreetly beside me. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You're dining alone? Bold choice for someone who used to be too intimidated to order coffee without me there to help." "Actually," I began, but he cut me off. "Let me guess, you're here to network. Still trying to break into the food industry with that little blog of yours?" His laugh was sharp-edged, designed to wound. "Some advice from an old friend. Places like this are for people who've actually made it, not aspirational tourists." The woman, Vivian, looked mortified now. "Ethan, that's enough." But the damage was done. 7 years melted away in an instant, and I was once again the insecure culinary school dropout who'd believed Ethan when he said I'd never succeed without him. The girl who'd cried for weeks after he'd left her for a woman who could open doors to the exclusive world he'd always craved. "Your usual table by the kitchen window is prepared, Ms. Cooper," the maitre d' said, a bit louder this time. "Chef Daniels mentioned he's looking forward to getting your feedback on the new tasting menu." Ethan's smirk faltered slightly. Before I could respond, my phone chimed with a text message. I glanced down to see it was from Gabriel. "Running 10 minutes late. Order the Krug Grande Cuvée for us, and don't let anyone steal my wife before I get there." As I looked back up, I caught Ethan staring at my left hand, where a platinum wedding band now sat. His expression shifted into something calculating, and I realized with a sinking feeling that our unexpected reunion was just beginning. Ethan and I met during my second year at the Culinary Institute in New York. He was charismatic, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in my dream of creating accessible gourmet food products. We'd bonded over shared childhood experiences, both raised in working-class families in Michigan, both determined to escape our modest beginnings. When I received the devastating news that my mother had been diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, Ethan had been supportive, at least initially. I withdrew from school to care for her in our small hometown of Lansing, managing her medical appointments while working 2 jobs to help with the mounting bills. Ethan stayed in New York, promising to visit when he could, but those visits grew increasingly infrequent as months passed. "Long distance is hard," he'd say during our late-night phone calls. "But we'll make it work. You'll come back to New York once your mom is better, and we'll pick up where we left off." I believed him because I needed to. Needed something to hold on to during the grueling 18 months of Mom's treatment. During that time, I started a food blog as a creative outlet, developing recipes that were both nutritious and appealing to someone undergoing chemotherapy. To my surprise, the blog gained a following among other caregivers and cancer patients. After Mom went into remission, I planned my return to New York, excited to reunite with Ethan and resume my culinary education. That's when everything fell apart. "I've met someone," he told me over the phone, his voice casual, as if he were commenting on the weather. Her name is Veronica. She's on the board of the James Beard Foundation. You're leaving me? I'd managed to ask through the shock. Let's be realistic, Mill. You've been away for almost 2 years. Your career is basically at a standstill, while I've made connections with people who actually matter in this industry. When I pointed out that I could return to school, that my blog was gaining traction, he'd scoffed. A little home cooking blog isn't going to open doors. Veronica has already introduced me to 3 Michelin-starred chefs. That's the kind of connection that makes a career. I'd hung up, devastated but determined not to let him see me crumble. 2 days later, I saw social media photos of Ethan at a gala, his arm around a sophisticated woman in her early 50s. Despite the heartbreak, I channeled my energy into building something meaningful. Mom's improved health allowed me to move to Chicago, where I leveraged my blog's following to launch a line of meal kits designed for cancer patients. It was modest at first, a small commercial kitchen, direct-to-consumer sales, tiny profit margins. What I didn't know then was that Ethan was tracking my progress. Occasional likes on business posts, mutual connections mentioning him asking about me. At the time, I interpreted it as friendly interest, perhaps even regret. I never suspected he was monitoring my career with growing resentment, watching as the little home cooking blog evolved into something that would eventually eclipse his own achievements. Looking back, there were signs I missed. Subtle digs wrapped in congratulatory messages, backhanded compliments when we occasionally crossed paths at industry events. Impressive for someone who didn't finish culinary school, he'd say. Or, nice niche market you've found, smart to stay in your lane. 4 years after our breakup, my company, Nourish by Millie, had expanded beyond meal kits to include a line of specialty sauces and spice blends. We'd just been featured in Food and Wine magazine when I received an email from Ethan with the subject line, "Congratulations, potential collaboration." It seemed professional, friendly even. He explained that he was now the executive chef at Veronica's newly opened bistro in Manhattan and proposed carrying my products in their retail section. Your story would resonate with our clientele, he wrote. Plus, it would be great to reconnect after all this time. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him during my next trip to New York. The bistro was elegant without being pretentious, and seeing Ethan in his chef whites, confidently directing his kitchen staff, I felt a twinge of what might have been nostalgia. You've done well for yourself, he said, giving me a tour of the restaurant. Small scale, of course, but impressive considering where you started. I bit back a retort about the condescension in small scale, and instead focused on the business opportunity. My products would gain exposure in a new market, and the profit margins looked promising. Over lunch, Ethan reminisced about our time together, carefully editing history to cast himself in a more favorable light. I always knew you had potential, he insisted. Sometimes people need space to grow in different directions. By dessert, he'd proposed an exclusive partnership. My products would be available only at his bistro in the New York market for 1 year, with potential to expand to Veronica's other restaurants if sales were strong. Speaking of Veronica, I ventured, will she be involved in this decision? Ethan's expression tightened momentarily. Veronica and I have transitioned to a purely professional relationship. She's more of a mentor now. I later learned from an industry contact that Veronica had ended their romantic relationship over a year earlier, but continued to support his career. Apparently, she'd tired of his youthful arrogance, as my contact delicately phrased it. We finalized the partnership details over the next few weeks. I was cautiously optimistic about this professional reconciliation, even allowing myself to wonder if Ethan had genuinely matured. The contract was set to begin the following month, with an initial order large enough to justify expanding my production capacity. 3 days before the launch, I received a terse email. Need to postpone the partnership indefinitely. Unforeseen circumstances. Will be in touch. Confused and concerned, I called Ethan repeatedly. No answer. I reached out to his sous chef, who reluctantly revealed that Ethan had left the bistro and New York abruptly. Apparently, he'd accepted a position at an upscale resort in Aspen, working for another wealthy older woman who'd been impressed by both his culinary skills and his charm. The expanded production capacity I'd invested in now threatened to bankrupt my company. Thousands of dollars in specialty packaging with exclusively for Veronica's Bistro labels sat in my warehouse, unusable. 3 new employees hired specifically for the increased production faced potential layoffs. When I finally reached Ethan a week later, his response was breathtakingly callous. Business opportunities change. You should know that better than anyone. Maybe this is a sign you should stick to your little blog and meal kits. Not everyone is cut out for the big leagues. I sat in my office that evening, surrounded by invoices for equipment I couldn't afford and payroll obligations I couldn't meet, realizing that Ethan hadn't changed at all. He was still the same selfish opportunist, willing to step on anyone, including me, especially me, to advance his own interests. For the first time since our breakup, I allowed myself to cry over Ethan Powell, not for love lost, but for my own foolishness in trusting him again. When the tears dried, they were replaced by a cold, clear determination. I would save my company, my employees' jobs, and my reputation, and I would never allow Ethan to impact my life again. What I didn't realize then was that our paths were destined to cross once more, under circumstances neither of us could have predicted. The collapse of the partnership with Ethan nearly destroyed everything I'd built. I had 2 weeks of operating capital left, thousands in debt, and a warehouse full of unusable product. In desperation, I reached out to every contact in my network, searching for alternative distribution channels. Most responses were sympathetic but unhelpful, until I received a call from Maya Jensen, a former blog subscriber who now worked in product development for Whole Harvest, a national grocery chain known for featuring artisanal brands. "I've been following your company since the blog days," Maya said. "Send me samples of everything you've got, including the bistro line. I think there's a fit with our premium stores." It was a lifeline, but barely. Even if Whole Harvest picked up my products, the timeline for onboarding new vendors typically took months. I needed a solution in weeks. I made the difficult decision to be transparent with my team. "I failed you," I admitted during our emergency meeting. "I let a personal connection cloud my business judgment, and now our company is at risk." To my surprise, instead of anger or resignation, I was met with determination. My small team rallied, proposing cost-cutting measures and alternative revenue streams. Clara, our marketing manager, suggested a direct-to-consumer campaign leveraging my personal story, including Ethan's betrayal. "People connect with authenticity," she insisted. "A Save Nourish campaign could generate immediate cash flow while we secure long-term distribution." It felt uncomfortably vulnerable, but I agreed. We launched a heartfelt video explaining our situation, offering special bundles of our products with significant pre-order discounts. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Loyal customers, blog followers, and cancer support groups mobilized to support us. As we scrambled to fulfill orders, Maya called with unexpected news. Whole Harvest wanted to fast-track our products for their holiday showcase, featuring us in 30 premium locations. It wasn't a complete solution, but combined with the direct sales, it would keep us afloat. Just as things were looking up, I received an email from an unfamiliar address, vivian.hargrove@hargrovehospitality.com. "Ms. Cooper, I recently sampled your fire-roasted tomato sauce at a colleague's home and was impressed by both the product and your company's origin story. Hargrove Hospitality is expanding our boutique hotel restaurants to feature more artisanal products with meaningful narratives. I believe your line would be an excellent fit for our Chicago location's new concept. If you're interested in discussing a potential partnership, I'm available to meet next week. Regards, Vivian Hargrove, CEO, Hargrove Hospitality Group." The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. A quick Google search revealed Vivian Hargrove was a respected figure in luxury hospitality, with a portfolio of high-end hotels and restaurants across the Midwest. This could be the game-changing opportunity we needed. We met the following Wednesday at her office overlooking Michigan Avenue. Vivian was gracious, sophisticated, and impressively knowledgeable about both my products and my company's history. "I've followed your journey with interest," she said. "Your resilience is admirable." The meeting went exceptionally well. Vivian proposed featuring my complete product line at the Artisan, her flagship hotel restaurant in Chicago, with potential expansion to all Hargrove properties if the initial launch was successful. "We're preparing to relaunch the Artisan with a new concept and new executive chef," she explained. "Your products align perfectly with our vision." The terms she offered were fair, the timeline aggressive but manageable. It seemed almost too good to be true, until we were finalizing details and Vivian casually mentioned her executive chef. "He's quite talented, though sometimes his ego exceeds his abilities," she said with a slight smile. "You might know him, Ethan Powell. He mentioned you were acquaintances from culinary school." My blood ran cold. "Ethan is your executive chef?" "For now," she replied cryptically. "Is that a problem?" I hesitated, weighing the opportunity against the prospect of working with Ethan again. "We do have history," I admitted. "Not entirely positive." Vivian studied me thoughtfully. "I suspected as much from his reaction when I mentioned considering your products. Perhaps you could elaborate?" I gave her a condensed version of our past, including the failed partnership. To my surprise, she didn't seem shocked. "This confirms some concerns I've had about Ethan's professional judgment," she said carefully. "Nevertheless, I see potential in your products that stands independent of any personal complications." We proceeded with the agreement, and I left feeling cautiously optimistic. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your deal with Vivian. Small world, isn't it? Looking forward to working together again. We should meet to discuss menu integration. Dinner tomorrow? Ethan." The message's smug tone made it clear. Ethan believed he had the upper hand in this situation, that somehow, despite his previous betrayal, I would be forced to accommodate him to secure this crucial partnership. What he didn't know was that I was no longer the same woman who had trusted him, twice, and paid the price. This time, I would be prepared. I agreed to meet Ethan at a casual bistro, neutral territory where we could discuss the partnership professionally. When I arrived, he was already seated, his expression smug as he watched me approach. "Millie," he greeted me, rising slightly. "You're looking, well..." The hesitation was deliberate, a subtle critique of my simple black dress and minimal makeup. I refused to take the bait. "Thanks for meeting me," I replied, keeping my tone businesslike. "I think it's important we establish clear parameters for this collaboration." Ethan signaled the waiter for another glass of wine. "Always so serious. Relax, Mill. This is a good thing for both of us. Your little sauces get the prestige of a Hargrove restaurant, and I get to help an old friend." "Help?" I raised an eyebrow. Interesting choice of word considering our history. He had the decency to look slightly abashed. Ancient history. We've both moved on clearly. His eyes flicked to my wedding ring. "Who's the lucky guy anyway?" "That's not relevant to our business discussion," I deflected. "Let's focus on how we'll integrate my products into your menu." "Fair enough," he conceded. "Though I should clarify, it's my menu. I'll decide which of your products to feature and how they'll be used." The next hour was an exercise in restraint, as Ethan outlined his vision, which essentially involved using my products as minor components in dishes that would primarily showcase his culinary techniques. "Your tomato sauce has potential as a base for my signature seafood cioppino," he explained condescendingly, "with proper enhancement, of course." "The sauce is designed to stand on its own," I pointed out. "Altering it significantly defeats the purpose of the partnership." Ethan's smile tightened. "Millie, this is a 3-star restaurant, not a home kitchen. Everything needs refinement to meet our standards." By the end of dinner, it was clear Ethan intended to minimize my product's presence while leveraging the partnership for his own reputation. As we were preparing to leave, he delivered his final blow. "One more thing, Vivian suggested we do some joint media appearances to promote the launch. Given your limited experience with high-end press, I'd be happy to take the lead. I appreciate the offer, I replied carefully, but I've done quite a bit of media for my brand already. Blog interviews and local morning shows aren't quite the same as the national platforms Vivian has lined up, he countered. Trust me on this, Mill. I know what appeals to the luxury market. I managed to maintain my composure until I was safely in my car, then let out a frustrated groan. Ethan wasn't just planning to undermine my products. He was positioning himself to take credit for their success and potentially damage my brand's reputation in the process. When I arrived home, I found Gabriel in our kitchen, testing recipes for his new seasonal menu. The sight of him, focused, creative, passionate without being pretentious, was a striking contrast to the evening I'd just endured. "How was it?" he asked, looking up from his notes. "Exactly as expected," I sighed. Ethan is still Ethan. Gabriel wiped his hands on a towel and pulled me into a hug. "I'm sorry, love. What's your next move?" Before I could answer, my phone chimed with an email from Vivian Hargrove. "Millie, I hope your meeting with Ethan was productive. Before we proceed further, I'd like to discuss some confidential concerns regarding the executive chef position at the Artisan. Are you available for breakfast tomorrow? Regards, Vivian." "That's unexpected," I murmured, showing Gabriel the message. "Maybe not entirely," he replied thoughtfully. "Vivian Hargrove has a reputation for recognizing talent and eliminating problems. The question is which category she's placed you in, and which one Ethan occupies." The next morning, I met Vivian at her penthouse apartment. Over gourmet coffee and freshly baked croissants, she revealed the true nature of her interest in my company. "I'll be direct, Millie. I'm considering significant changes at the Artisan, including the executive chef position." I blinked in surprise. "You're firing Ethan?" "Let's say I'm reevaluating our arrangement," she replied carefully. "Ethan has technical skill, but he lacks something essential: the genuine passion and integrity I value in my culinary partners." She paused, studying me intently. "What I'm about to propose may seem unusual, but I've done my research. Your culinary background, combined with your product development expertise and compelling personal story, makes you an ideal candidate to help reshape the Artisan's identity." "You're offering me Ethan's job?" I asked incredulously. "Not exactly," Vivian clarified. "I'm offering you something more significant, a partnership. Your product line featured exclusively at the Artisan, with you serving as culinary director, developing the menu concept, training the kitchen staff on your techniques, and becoming the public face of our rebranded restaurant." The proposition was stunning, a complete reversal of the power dynamic Ethan had established. But it also presented an ethical dilemma. Despite everything, deliberately taking Ethan's position felt uncomfortably like the vindictive behavior he'd exhibited toward me. Sensing my hesitation, Vivian added, "This isn't about personal vendettas, Millie. It's a business decision. Ethan was always a temporary solution while I sought the right partner for my vision. The fact that you have history is coincidental, though perhaps karmic." As I considered her offer, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Vivian loved my ideas for your products. We're proceeding with my vision. Congratulations on finally making it to the big leagues, even if it's just as a supplier." And just like that, my ethical concerns evaporated. The following weeks were a carefully choreographed dance of preparation and secrecy. Vivian and I agreed that Ethan should remain unaware of the coming changes until all arrangements were finalized. Meanwhile, I would proceed with the partnership as planned, allowing him to believe he was in control of the situation. "It's not deception," Vivian assured me when I expressed discomfort with the approach. "It's strategic timing. Ethan's contract includes a performance review clause that gives me complete discretion regarding his continued employment." I threw myself into developing a comprehensive concept for the Artisan's reinvention. By day, I ran Nourish and participated in planning meetings with Ethan, where I nodded agreeably at his increasingly pretentious menu ideas. By night, I worked with Gabriel and my team on a vision that would showcase both my products and the Artisan's potential. 3 weeks before the scheduled launch, Vivian called an all-staff meeting at the restaurant. Ethan positioned himself prominently at her side, clearly expecting some sort of endorsement or announcement about his brilliant new menu concept. As you know, we've been preparing for a significant relaunch, Vivian began. Today, I'm pleased to announce our new culinary partnership with Nourish by Millie. Ethan smiled smugly, reaching to shake my hand for the cameras documenting the event. What you may not know, Vivian continued, is that Millie Cooper isn't just a successful product developer. She's also a culinary visionary, whose personal journey from food blogger to industry innovator embodies exactly what the artisan aims to represent. Ethan's smile faltered slightly as Vivian gestured for me to join her. Effective immediately, Millie will be joining our team as culinary director, overseeing the complete reconceptualization of the artisan's menu and dining experience. The room erupted in applause as Ethan's expression shifted from confusion to shock and finally to anger. What exactly does that mean for my position? He asked, his voice tight. Vivian answered smoothly. We'll discuss the details privately, but essentially, you'll be reporting to Millie on all culinary matters moving forward. The meeting continued with a presentation of the new concept, a seasonal narrative-driven menu that celebrated the stories behind exceptional ingredients. Throughout, Ethan remained rigid with barely contained fury. Afterwards, he cornered me in the kitchen. Is this your idea of revenge? He hissed. You manipulated Vivian just to get back at me? This is business, Ethan, I replied calmly. Vivian made a decision based on what's best for her restaurant. I won't work under you, he declared. It's professionally demeaning, and frankly, absurd. You didn't even finish culinary school. I met his gaze steadily. That's your choice. I'm sure Vivian will accept your resignation if that's what you decide. His face flushed with anger. This isn't over. Later that day, I learned that Ethan had gone directly to Vivian, threatening to quit unless my role was reconsidered. To my surprise, she had accepted his resignation on the spot and announced it to the kitchen staff. The timing is unfortunate, she told me over the phone, but perhaps it's for the best. A clean break allows us to move forward without lingering tension. While I agreed in principle, Ethan's abrupt departure created immediate practical challenges. The head sous chef was competent, but inexperienced with menu development. The kitchen staff, accustomed to Ethan's autocratic style, seemed uncertain about the new hierarchy. And most critically, we now had less than 3 weeks to finalize and test an entirely new menu before the high-profile relaunch. I called an emergency meeting with my Nourish team and Gabriel, explaining the situation. I need to be on site at the Artisan full-time until this is resolved, I concluded. Can you handle things here? They assured me they could manage Nourish's operations temporarily, but Gabriel looked concerned. You're taking on an impossible timeline, he warned. Even established restaurant teams need months to develop and perfect new concepts. I don't have months, I replied. This opportunity won't come again. The next 20 days were the most intense of my professional life. I practically lived at the Artisan, working alongside the kitchen staff to develop and refine dishes that told a cohesive story while featuring my products organically within the menu. Progress was uneven, complicated by passive resistance from a few staff members loyal to Ethan. Just when we seemed to be finding our rhythm, disaster struck. 1 week before the relaunch, food critic and influencer Dominic Walsh posted an exclusive preview of the Artisan's troubles on his widely followed blog. Sources close to the Artisan report chaotic conditions following the unexpected departure of executive chef Ethan Powell. Owner Vivian Hargrove has reportedly replaced him with Millie Cooper, a home economist with no formal culinary training or restaurant experience. Industry insiders are skeptical about this unconventional choice for one of Chicago's most prestigious dining establishments. The damaging post, clearly fed by Ethan, was already generating buzz in culinary circles. Reservation cancellations began trickling in, and several planned media features were put on hold, pending the actual launch. Vivian called me to her office, her expression grave. This is problematic, Millie. The hospitality industry runs on perception as much as reality. I nodded, feeling a familiar sinking sensation. Once again, Ethan had found a way to sabotage me just as success seemed within reach. But this time, I refused to accept defeat. "Give me 24 hours, I told Vivian. "I think I know how to turn this around." 7 years after Ethan dumped me for Veronica, I was celebrating the second anniversary of the Artisan's wildly successful relaunch. What had begun as a crisis had transformed into a triumph. My emergency solution to Dominic Walsh's damaging post had been to host an intimate preview dinner for select food writers and social media influencers, allowing them to experience the new concept firsthand rather than relying on rumors. The authentic, story-driven menu had resonated powerfully, generating the positive buzz we needed to survive the initial controversy. 2 years later, the Artisan boasted its own Michelin star, and my expanded role as culinary director for all Hargrove restaurants had made me a recognized figure in the industry. I was dining with Gabriel, now my husband of 18 months, at L'Artiste to celebrate both our professional success and our recent news. Nourish by Millie had just been acquired by a major food corporation for a sum that would ensure our financial security for life. That's when I spotted him, Ethan, seated near the entrance with a significantly older woman dripping in expensive jewelry. He looked essentially the same, perhaps a bit thicker around the middle, his once boyish features now sharpened by ambition and disappointment. When he noticed me, his initial shock quickly morphed into a sneer. After excusing himself from his companion, he stopped by our table. Well, Millie Cooper," he drawled, pointedly ignoring Gabriel. "This isn't really your scene, is it? Still playing culinary director at Vivian's little restaurant?" Before I could respond, Gabriel extended his hand. "Actually, it's Millie Daniels now. I don't believe we've formally met. Gabriel Daniels?" Ethan's brow furrowed slightly as he reluctantly shook Gabriel's hand. "Daniels? Why does that sound familiar?" "Perhaps because I own this restaurant," Gabriel replied pleasantly. "Among others." The color drained from Ethan's face as understanding dawned. You're that Gabriel Daniels? The Gabriel Daniels?" "The very same," Gabriel confirmed, slipping his arm around my waist. "Though these days I'm perhaps better known as Millie's husband. But then again, in culinary circles, who isn't?" He smiled warmly at me. "My brilliant wife's empire now includes 15 restaurants and a product line in every premium grocery store in the country." Ethan stood frozen, visibly processing this information. "Don't you know who she is?" Gabriel continued, his tone conversational but pointed. "Millie Daniels, the woman who revolutionized chef-quality home products and earned 3 James Beard nominations in the process. The woman who transformed the Artisan from a struggling establishment into the crown jewel of the Hargrove portfolio." Ethan's face cycled through emotions: shock, disbelief, and finally, a desperate attempt to salvage his dignity. "You've certainly come a long way from that scared culinary school dropout," he managed, his voice strained. "Congratulations on your success." "Thank you," I replied simply. "And you? Still working as a private chef?" He straightened his shoulders. "I'm the personal executive chef for Mrs. Eleanor Jenkins." He gestured toward his dining companion. "She's very particular about her cuisine." "I'm sure she is," Gabriel said, his tone pleasant but eyes evaluating. "Eleanor Jenkins. Wasn't she on the board of that art foundation that had the embezzlement scandal last year?" Ethan's smile faltered. "She was cleared of all involvement." "Of course," Gabriel nodded. "Her husband wasn't so fortunate as I recall." The woman at Ethan's table was now watching our interaction with obvious impatience. She tapped her watch pointedly when Ethan glanced her way. "I should get back," he muttered. "Eleanor doesn't like to be kept waiting." As he turned to leave, I couldn't resist one final observation. "You know, Ethan, you once told me I'd never succeed without you, that I needed to attach myself to someone influential to open doors. It's interesting how life turns out, isn't it?" He paused, his back stiffening. "We all make our choices." "Yes," I agreed. "And I chose to build something on my own terms." After he retreated to his table, Gabriel raised his champagne glass. "To choices," he toasted, "and to the most remarkable woman I've ever pursued, who made me work for a full year just to get a first date. I clinked my glass against his. Best decision I ever made. As we enjoyed our meal, I occasionally caught glimpses of Ethan stealing glances our way, watching as industry leaders stopped by our table to pay respects, as the head chef emerged from the kitchen to personally discuss his newest creations with us, as Gabriel and I laughed and celebrated our shared success. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Ethan, dependent on the whims and wealth of an aging socialite, versus the life I'd built through determination, integrity, and genuine talent. Later that evening, as Gabriel and I were leaving, the maitre d' handed me an envelope. "From the gentleman with Mrs. Jenkins," he explained discreetly. Inside was a business card with a hastily scrawled note. "We should catch up properly sometime. I've got some culinary concepts that might interest you. Ethan." I slipped the card into the donation box by the door, already focusing on tomorrow's plans and possibilities. The past had no hold on me anymore. I was too busy looking forward to my next chapter.